Alright everybody, in today's video I'm going to give you a quick overview of how I use SketchUp to design something. In this example we're going to be making these headphone controller holder. And so you can see I got two designs here. They're meant to hold a controller and headphones and possibly give you a room to charge them as well. Alright, I do have dimensions listed here that I'm going to kind of go based on. This is based off of the headphone and controller that I have. So you may have to tweak those designs as you want. I will also include a screenshot of these dimensions. So if you're trying to follow along with me, you can follow along with that. To start, I'm going to go ahead and make this base first. It looks like it's a 15 by 9 centimeter rectangle. So I'm just going to come over here, R for rectangle, and click and release. I'm typing in 9, 15, and you can see at the bottom right corner the dimensions start filling in. My units are already in centimeters, so I don't have to worry about putting any units. And looking at my dimensions over here, it is 1 centimeter high, and that looks like everything is 1 centimeter high. So I'll pull that up 1 centimeter, hit enter, and there we go. That is my base component. Now I'm going to go ahead and triple click this to select everything there. Hit G to group it, and I'm going to name this thing base. So I'll call it base plate. All right. Now part of this video tutorial, I'm trying to show you when to use components as well too. So anytime that I would imagine I'm building the thing with a separate piece, let's say I was building this out of wood, I would imagine that the bottom and the top, the back and this tilted piece, those are all going to be separate components because they would probably be separate pieces that you would cut and glue together. All right, and if you were 3D printing this, this model as is does not make sense to 3D print. There's a lot of overhangs and things like that. There would be a lot of support material. So it doesn't make sense to 3D print as one thing, but if you were 3D printing as well too, you could imagine printing these as separate components and then gluing or screwing them together. All right, going up the top, we're going to do this as a total height of 22. One way I can do that is using the tape measure tool. So I'll hit T for tape measure and start pulling this up. I can lock the tape measure in the up direction by hitting the up arrow. And then if I type in a dimension of 22 and hit enter, there's my 22. So I'm going to draw a rectangle here on this base plate. And if we look at the bottom dimension box, my first number is not correct yet, but the second number is. It should be 9 centimeters. So if I want to change just the first number, I want that to be 1 centimeter wide. So I'll type in a 1, a comma, and then I don't need to type in the other dimension. I can leave it as is, and SketchUp will fill in and keep what it already was beforehand. So it's set to be 9 already. If I just leave it blank and hit enter, it's kept it as 9 and it filled it in. I will pull this up, and I'm going to kind of zoom out, and I'm going to hover on this line and click it. And now that height is set. And I want to triple click that, group it. I'll call that back plate. All right, moving along. Let's go ahead and make this the controller holder next. So I'm actually going to kind of make it off over here. You can see I'm starting, dimensions are 6 by 6, and then I have this little thing on the front. Quickly, let's see, this is also 1 centimeter thick too. So I'm going to come over here. Off to the side, let's do a 6 by 6 rectangle, so 6, 6, and hit enter. I will use P for push pull and push that up 1 centimeter and group that. This is controller base. And then I'm going to add the little front piece. The front piece is a little thinner too. To do that, I'm going to drag over there like that from corner to corner, and I'm snapped. You can see my dimension box, it's saving that 6 centimeters. That is correct. So I can skip putting in that dimension. I can just go right to hitting a comma and change the second dimension to a 1 for 1. Actually, no, I want this one to be a little thinner, 0.5 centimeters. All right, and then I'll push pull that up. Let's see, let me zoom in. Oops. SketchUp's got this weird dimension thing going on right now. It's apparently getting fixed. They know about it, but dimensions just kind of bug out. All right, looks like 2 centimeters high. So I'll pull that up 2 centimeters. Okay, I'm going to group that whole thing. The reason why I'm grouping that whole thing is because when I move it, I want to move it as one piece. All right. Now, I think I want to get that kind of in place first, and then I'm going to move it up into the air. Then I'm going to tilt it on an angle. So let's kind of get this into place. I'm going to use the move tool, so M for move. I should be able to find a midpoint. There we go. And I can snap it to the midpoint in the base plate, just like that. So now I know that's centered now. Now I can grab it, same place if I want. I can start moving. If I click the up arrow, it should lock me so I'm just moving in the up direction. And let's just pick something that looks good. I'm going to try 3 centimeters up. See if that works. When we tilt it, we'll see. It should be fine. We can always change it later. So that's centered. It's now off the ground. Next thing I want to do is go ahead and tilt this. Now, I'm going to use the rotate tool. The move tool also has a built-in rotate function now. I didn't used to see this. So, if I just kind of use the M for move tool and click on one of these red little handle things, I can also rotate this thing. So I'm thinking about like that or that would be good. Maybe a little steep. Okay, so you could do it that way. We can also be more precise in some ways if we use the other built-in rotate tool. So by hitting Q on your keyboard, you can bring up this kind of protractor looking thing. And this one is kind of weird to get the hang of. It's like a 3-click thing. So I click once where I need to start it, once in the direction that I kind of want to rotate from, and then I can just kind of pivot up. Now let's say I wanted an angle of like 15 degrees. I can type in 15 and boom, it's set to 15 degrees. I like that better. I feel like I have more fine control over getting the exact angle, but it is a more confusing tool to use. So that's our starting point. You can see, I'm pretty sure I did 15 degrees before too, so that kind of lines up. All right, now we're going to go ahead and put a little stand underneath this thing. Now, I don't know what size it should be. I'm going to kind of make it up, but I do want it centered here. So I'm going to go ahead and use the tape measure tool. I'll click down here and pull out. And if I hover along this edge, it will find the midpoint, which is 4.5 centimeters if the whole thing was 9. And then this way, I think I'm just going to eyeball it. I want to find something that looks good. So I'm going to use the circle tool. So C for circle on your keyboard. I can snap to this line, kind of pull out maybe about this far, and drag that out. Now, if you look in the bottom corner for the dialog for the dimensions, this is telling me the radius of this thing. Let's say 1 actually looks kind of decent in this case, so I think that might be a good size. I'll use 1 as my dimension, and then I'll hit P for push-pull and push that thing up. Now here, I don't really care how high this goes, and I'm not going to be too precise. I'm not going to tweak this and cut it on the angle. I'm just going to let it kind of ride inside the middle. Now, I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to push-pull it down a little bit more just so I know it's fully inside, and it seems like it's being weird on me. So I'm just going to push it up 0.5 centimeter and see if that gets it. There we go. Now, I'm going to turn on X-ray for a minute so you can see what this looks like. X-ray is a custom keyboard shortcut that I set up with the X button, which I would recommend. You can see we're barely touching, almost not touching there, and that one's good. I want it buried in the middle. That's fine. If I was actually hooking this piece on and it was made of wood, I would probably drill that thing on an angle and just make sure I don't go all the way through. All right, that's our starting point. All right, and let's continue with the top part. So I designed it in 2 different ways. I did just a peg, and then I did the kind of arched way too. So let's see, I can do both real quick. So, oops, zoomed in a little far. I'm going to use the tape measure to find center again. Should be 4.5 somewhere in here, midpoint. There it is. All right, so that's center. Again, if I wanted to do the circle tool, I think the same 1-inch circle would be okay. So I'm just gonna kind of pick a spot that looks good, and a 1-inch diameter circle there, or sorry, 1-inch radius circle, and then let's say we'll pull it out to that distance. Something about the push-pull tool, you can, as you're pulling it, you can snap to other things. The push-pull only works in that one direction. So I can snap to there, or I can snap to there, I can snap to way out here. Okay, find something to snap to that makes sense. Let's actually go back to that point. Okay, so that's one way, and I should also kind of name that and group it. Okay. The reason why I would group that is if I wanted to move it. Let's say I didn't like how high it was. I could use the move tool now and grab it. Try to grab it in the center and slide it up or down depending on what I like. So if I find that it was too tall or I wanted it all the way up to the top, I could easily move it around using the move tool. All right, so that's one way. Or we could do a different way. So I'm going to show you the other way as well. This way I'm going to do with an arc. So this whole thing is 9 wide. I'm going to drag a dimension with the tape measure tool, half of that, to get a perfect half radius arc along the top. So I'm going to come down with a tape measure 4.5 centimeters. Now I should be able to use the arc tool. So hit A on your keyboard, snap there and there, and then you pull up. It should say half circle if I do everything correctly. That's because I planned this dimension. I knew exactly how far to come down. Okay, and then once that's snapped there, if I wanted to, I could then come like this. Actually, I did this kind of weird. If I wanted to pull that out like this, I could do that. All right. Now, if I wanted to make this whole thing like look continuous, the thing is, this is a component and this is a separate thing that's not quite a component yet. This would be arch holder. Okay. So if I wanted this to kind of be cut off, right? I can't just come in here and use the eraser tool and delete those sections. It deletes the whole thing, right? I need to be able to modify this component. So if I double clicked it, I could sketch this arc one more time. This time I'm actually drawing on the component though. So now I've actually separated this component into separate pieces, and so I should be able to pull these away, and now it would all blend in as one thing. That looks nice. All right, and maybe we would want to maybe reduce some of this on the inside because it's very bulky, but you get the idea. All right, so that's a rough version of it, and if I wanted to keep tweaking it, I could come in and tweak some of these things. So for example, I could put a little radius on these guys. So let's say I wanted a half centimeter radius on all these corners. Measure in 0.5 and 0.5. That gives me a place to snap the arc tool, and again I should be able to pull it out. I should be able to find a snap point that says tangent to edge. That's the goal, and then I would be able to push. Oops, I realized I wasn't drawing in the component yet. Let me try that again. Because the first time I drew this thing, I drew that as separate pieces. So that's just a quick addition. I think it looks good. Let's come over to the side. Center, arc, and I'll take it. Sometimes very helpful to and sometimes you can flop into. Sometimes also you can go in and change your length. So we're not snapping to 1 centimeter, make that way smaller snapping. You can see, this should work easier. Just a little bit. And then I can push that. Just a quick way to modify that, make it a little nicer. And of course I have all these extra lines in there. Get some news. Here's some extra bits. Now, if I wanted to give it one final look, I could decorate it a little bit. I could add some colors. So if I hit B for bucket, that would bring up the essentially paint or materials tool. I could just add a color to the whole thing. And if let's get rid of some of these extra lines too. If I select the whole entire thing, I could just click and drag and color the whole thing. Or maybe I wanted it to look wooden, for example. I could try to find wood that looks decent. There you go. And it gives you a rough idea. And then the models I found earlier, those were from the SketchUp warehouse. So I clicked this fourth option on the right menu, and I can search for things and just import in there, and I can use that to test things out too. So I hope you enjoyed this quick tutorial, and I hope you learned something. Thanks. Bye.